We'll do our stretching that we do at the temple. Put your hands together, our face. Massaging our scalp from the front, our forehead down to the base of our neck, the base of our skull, sorry. And pull on our ears, acupressure points, and also right here. Moving forward, stretch. You can move from side to side, get a little bit of a stretch in your hips and legs. And interlace your hands up above your head. And fold forward. And then interlace your hands again. And then reach to your left. To the right. And then your hands interlace behind your back, opening up your chest, stretching your front, and then lean forward. And we come up, and we twist to the left. We twist to the right. And we make big circles with our torso, slowly rotating. First in one direction, 3 times. We stop at the bottom and reverse direction. And we sit up and then we lean over to our left. And to our right. We interlace our fingers behind our head and we breathe in and out. And then we twist to the left. Nice and tall. Don't forget to breathe in to the right. Run a couple of times. And we point upwards with our index fingers, stretching our back, our head tilted up towards the ceiling. And we breathe in and drop our shoulders. And put our hands together in Hapcha and make a bow. And then you can move off of your mat and cushion, fixing your mat and cushion as you do so, and sit comfortably. And then I'm going to let the cat out of the room. Okay, and I'm going to unmute everybody. Let's see. Okay, that should be. All right. The spring is coming. I don't know if you had the opportunity and the good fortune to be outside at all today. The sun is shining and the flowers are starting. We saw some new tulips that were just buds yesterday. Now they're open, bright red. Everything's greener. The leaves are starting to come in. Nature's just doing its thing. And with my husband, we take a walk every day, and we walked over to the lake, and there were a lot of waves on the lake. It was pretty rough. There was somebody surfing. And we were looking and listening to the wave by the lakefront. And I was reminded of, you may be familiar actually with Thich Nhat Hanh's description of waves, which seemed particularly appropriate. And it's a really profound teaching. And just because I was thinking it today, I'll just share it with you all. I'm sure many of you know it. But Thich Nhat Hanh likes to say, you know, the wave, as it gets closer and closer to the shore, it gets more and more anxious. And it becomes afraid. And it's going closer, closer to the shore, and it can see the shore, and it says, oh my goodness, when I get to the shore, I'm going to die. And it's becoming more and more afraid as it gathers steam and as it makes it to the shore. And Thich Nhat Hanh likes to say, and just when, you know, the wave is about to crash and it's most terrified of dying, of ceasing to exist, Thich Nhat Hanh says, at that moment, the wave remembers that it's made of water. And as soon as the wave remembers that it's made of water, it relaxes, right? Because of course it's not going to die. It's just going to become water. It won't be there in the same form, but it's still there. And I just think that's a really, really lovely story, because it really speaks to the heart of our anxiety and how wrapped up it is with our attachment to being a wave, thinking that this manifestation of particles is what we really are, and being afraid of it ceasing to exist, which is completely normal. But again, the wave remembers that it's water and relaxes. So yeah, so it's good to see everybody. This is our last class. So yeah, we're gonna try to teach or refresh memories on walking meditation and prostrations via the internet, which could be a little bumpy, but bear with us. But before we get to the walking meditation and prostrations, I just want to go back through. I want to go through the last list. So as you remember, we had the 3 foundation stones: peace, contentment, and gratitude. We had the 5 fingers of Zen, right, which were meditation, chanting, prostrations, work, practice, and direct experience. And now we have another list, which is a list of 7, and which is what we call the 7 eyes of meditation. And I think it's supposed to be EYE. But it's a checklist to go through every time we meditate. Just what are the elements from kind of the most basic. And we'll see they get a little more abstract as we go along. But every time you sit to meditate, it's just a nice checklist to just remember things to keep in mind while you meditate and things to guide your practice. So we'll go over that now. So the first eye of meditation is our posture, right? The asana is the same word in yoga as it is in Buddhism. And so that makes sense, right? Because as soon as you sit to meditate, you're making a decision about which posture you're going to use. So it could be kneeling, it could be Burmese, novice monk, it could be quarter lotus, it could be half lotus. It's all good. Right, so you make your decision about a posture and you sit in your posture. And so then the second thing generally that you bring your attention to after you've decided which posture you're going to use, the second thing is your mudra, or what you're going to do with your hands. So once again, with our hands, and I can right, so our hands are nice and round with the thumbs touching, left hand and the right hand, thumbs touching like this. And again, most of the time it'll be right at our Tanshan area. So it's a nice way of guiding our breath and guiding our attention down into our core. And making sure that we are nice and attentive, have a nice round mudra. If you have a feline or a small dog, you can imagine it putting its head right through that circle that you make with your fingers. And like I like to say on 5-day meditation retreats or long sittings, a good teacher will walk by and be able to see that when you get tired, because what happens is this, your roof collapses, right? So this is a nice sort of way of maintaining your concentration and that energy that we talked about in your practice, right? That hair on fire attentiveness that we don't necessarily associate with meditation, but that's really key in our tradition. So posture, asanas, and then the third one is your tongue. So does anybody remember what happens to your tongue when you meditate?
Back of your teeth.
Samba?
Against the back of your teeth and the roof of your mouth.
That's right, exactly right. Tucked up against the back of your top front teeth. Exactly. So, and I like the fact that whoever, sort of devised this thought of it, right? And sort of said, oh, what should you do with your tongue? That's actually a really important thing. And I still remember back when I first started coming to the temple and started coming on Wednesday nights, and I would sit next to Moja, who's been coming on Sundays. And of course, we usually hadn't eaten right before Wednesday night sitting. And so we would sit there and our stomachs would growl and this and that. But again, and I think Susha mentioned this when we talked about the tongue, it's apparently just this way to stop you from like drooling while you meditate, right? It gives you sort of this place for your saliva to go. So that's always a good thing. So yeah, your tongue is tucked. So posture, hands, tongue. And then the fourth thing is actually your eyes, right? The fourth eye of meditation is the eyes, and your eyes are open and focused in front of you, right? So there are a lot of meditation traditions where your eyes are closed. Our founding teacher, Sunim, likes to say the issue with that is that as soon as you close your eyes, your mind just starts wandering and drifting. But it's actually very hard to maintain your concentration with your eyes closed. And also, I'll just add with your eyes open, I'm not sure if this happens to you. I'd be interested in hearing, like, who sees things in the floor when you meditate? Yeah, Sushim? Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, everybody. And I was entertained once, I think Susha might remember this, and maybe some of you also were there. I think it was a retreat where Sunam was just like he admitted that happens to him, which I found really charming because I thought it was like just something for novices, right? That you sort of, our brains are so overeager to like finish everybody's sentence and fill things in and see things that aren't there, right? That, I remember I saw Disney characters a lot in the first years when I started meditating. And Sunim said that he saw a highway with cars going back and forth, right? And he said when that happens, like when your mind is so in overdrive that it's like making up stories in the carpet. This beautiful Oriental rug that my ex-husband and I got in Turkey that I sit on, I was sitting one day and there's something about the pattern, and I actually even took a picture of it and I have it somewhere, but where like the curlicues in the flowers actually spell the word B-E. I'm like, and one morning I'm like, wow, it's like, well, no, it's not there, right? It's just our projection. So, so Sunam's advice when that starts happening, and when you start seeing things in your floor, because we just really can't stand to not see something and to not make something out of nothing. He said, just turn your head a little bit, right? Like just turn your head and look a little bit diagonally, like shift your focus away from that spot that you've been focusing on, and that'll break the spell of whatever is starting to creep into your meditation. So for what that's worth. So your eyes, that's number 4. So we have the posture, we have the hands, we have the tongue, we have the eyes. The 5th eye of meditation is your practice, right? So And your practice is, it could be counting your outgoing breath silently from 5 to 0. If you've done a longer retreat or been given a different practice by a teacher, right? It could be reciting Sogamuni Bull or Kwanseum Bosal. It could be koan practice. It can, but it could be counting from 5 to 0 in Korean. There are all sorts of things that teachers will assign, and it's easy to get in the trap. And I've heard this so many times of people sort of saying, "Oh, I want koan practice," like it's as if it's like you're graduating, right? And I think I even thought that at one point, but it's really like shifting the practice when the teacher does that is actually just shaking you up a little bit, right? Because we get in ruts with our meditation, and if you've been meditating for a while, or even just a short period of time, we just kind of get where we're very comfortable. And even with a koan, we could just, it's like an old comfortable shirt, and we put it on, and we're like, yeah, I'm good. And that's not that, wake up energy. That's the kind of like, this feels really nice. So I think at this moment we're all very shaken up, so we don't need to emphasize that too much, but that's something that teachers can do, so that when you go on a retreat and you do a Zen interview with a teacher and they say, show me your practice, they can sort of tell if it's got stale, right? And it does. It's not a failing, right? That's just what practice does. It just gets a little bit old and stale. So when Haju's in town, I really recommend, coming to early morning practice, because even if she doesn't give you a new practice, like, I don't know about you, Sushima, were you at the Sunday morning practice, Sunball, when she was in town recently, or did you come to the 6 a.m.? Yeah.
I did.
Because, just that short conversation, right? I was just like, oh my gosh, like, it was like having cold water dumped on your practice. And it was just like, oh, you're right. Like I, haven't been, so that's sort of how to refresh your practice, right? And keep it fresh in this moment. All right. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we're up to the practice. The 6th eye of meditation, I'm going to go turn a light on because I'm about to disappear in the darkness. So the 6th eye of meditation is, I like the 6th one, which is over and over, again and again, come back to your practice. So, so what does that mean? It means, what I love about Buddhism is, and I say this a lot, is it normalizes failure. Right? It tells you to let go of that dream that you're going to be a perfect practitioner, you're going to get enlightened, or you're going to do it just exactly right. It doesn't mean you should stop trying, but failure is built in, right? And our Sunim likes to say, if you fall down 7 times, get up 8 times, which somebody pointed out to me once is mathematically kind of incorrect, but it sounds great. And it's not, it's really when you fall down, when you lose track, when you get distracted, right? There's no blue ribbon if you get to 36 without losing your concentration, or if you get from 5 to 0, your mind will wander. That's what minds do. And so it's not about you're a terrible person or you failed as a meditator if your mind wanders. It's just, this is what you do when your mind wanders. And I just find that so lovely because I think we're all brought up in this kind of pressure cooker from school, our families, whatever, with all of these expectations and shoulds. I usually at some point during the meditation class talk about Chicago as the city of big shoulders, but I think we all are. And to just, it's just going to happen. That's what people do. And this is what you should do when your mind wanders. So just come back. That's all. Just come back. Over and over again and again, come back to your practice. And it's really that that simple. And Sunil, I've heard him on retreats just sort of keep coming back to that message. Yeah. So over and over again and again, come back to your practice, but it's only the 6th eye meditations. The 7th eye meditation. So I tell a story about this one. When I took the meditation class for the first time in 2007, I took it with Sanha, who was living at the Chicago Temple at the time. And when she presented the 7 eyes of meditation, she said, oh, and the 7th eye meditation is wisdom. Wow, okay, wisdom, wow, that's a big, okay. Prajna, wisdom, you know, that's all right. Like that's pretty exciting. We finally got there. And then when I was training to teach the meditation class, and I was following Haju for a couple of years, and I would sit down in the classes, and she would get to the 7th eye of meditation, and she'd say, does anybody know what it is? And, you know, and people would, and she said, well, you know, the 7th eye of meditation is like, remind me, Sushin, what's the exact wording? I'm losing the exact wording. The
over and over again and again.
No, that's 6. That's number 6 is over and over again and again.
Out into the world.
Huh? Practice
out into the world.
Exactly, right. Yes, exactly. Bringing your practice into the world. Thank you. I couldn't remember the exact wording. Exactly. So, and over again and again, because that's an ongoing process, right? Not coming back to your practice, but bringing your practice into the world. And I remember looking at Hajj and going, well, that's not the 7th eye of wisdom, or that's not what I was taught, right? I was taught that the 7th eye of meditation was wisdom. And of course, you know, Hajj kind of looked at me and I was like, oh, that's what wisdom is. So what does that mean is, you know, well, what do you think that means, taking your practice into the world? And why is that the 7th eye of meditation? How do you hear that? Like, what does that bring up for you? There's not a right answer. There's not a wrong answer.
Just that, like, your meditation is not just isolated to when you're sitting on the mat, and it's like this completely separate thing. Am I sounding weird?
You are. I mean,
sorry about that.
That's okay.
Did you understand what I said, though?
I do. Yes, exactly. I do. Yes.
Okay.
It sounds like you have a kazoo.
Yeah, it does. It sounds like that to me, too. I don't know what's up with that. Sorry.
That's okay. It's been a long time. But yes, right. Sanbang, taking your practice into the world?
To me, it's similar, just using the Dharma in your everyday life and taking that oneness that you get on the mat and cushion out into the world. And what we're doing when we're in meditation is gaining wisdom and understanding of the truth of reality.
Yeah. Yeah. Susha, any thoughts about?
Yeah, it's.
I have a feeling every day of the year we would give different answers to this. That's why I'm interested in hearing, just like, how do we hear it today? Yeah.
A little bit like what Zhangji was saying, but it's you know, it's one thing to be in touch with and have an awareness of the 3 foundation stones, for instance, when you're sitting in 25 minutes of meditation, and it's almost easier, or it is easier, but it's when we face hardships, and it's so easy just to go back to our bad habits and the way that, you know, kind of our reactive mind maybe, and so it's really cultivation of practice, and then yeah, actually relying on our wisdom that we can overcome maybe those bad habits, or you know, be different.
Yeah, I think so. And I'm going to just kind of throw out there too, how do I say, like, getting back to, because I still am hearing a lot of, how do I say, a lot of trying, and what you guys were saying, and again, there is no wrong answer, there's no right answer. I'm just gonna sort of bring out and just raise this and see what you think, is this idea, I'm just hearing a lot of muscling the practice, right? Like, okay, we get wisdom on the cushion, or we should X and Y and Z, and we come back to our practice, and then we come out in the world with our wisdom. And I would go even, I think it's even more radical than that, right? And I think one of the things that's really hard to remember, and it's hard to sort of keep in focus, and if we had kind of a senior teacher maybe around us, to me, that's what they always are, just kind of there to keep doing, is like a coach and keep pushing you. So I'm going to make a really awkward attempt to do that, which is that it's even more radical than that. It's really abandoning yourself or surrendering yourself and your practice to the world, right? So it's really in every single situation, really letting go of yourself and even your practice, and even the fact that you sat for 25 minutes in the morning, but just being incredibly responsive to what is right before me right now. What does this situation need? And serving that, right? The serve all beings as Buddhism bodhisattvas kind of thing, right? Like, it was just like, wow, this was true 5 minutes ago, but it's not true in this situation, right? And we're always kind of slipping up. And I was telling my students this story this morning, which our building, as Sushim knows, the building where I live is probably 2/3 70-year-old and over, right? Of the people who live in my building are at least 60 and over, and they're all justifiably kind of freaking out about the coronavirus. And so they, and it's a lot of apartments in this building, and so they sent out guidelines to sort of how to act in common rooms and X and Y and Z. And one of the things, they recently sent an email and they said, well, clearly we need a refresher, because people aren't watching, the coronavirus, they're not following the instructions very well. And part of the reminder was, just wear shoes when you're in the laundry room, because we have laundry rooms on each of the halls. They're not in the apartments, but they're down the hall. But the hall's carpeted and you're home, and I don't put shoes on in my house, or even really socks. But I remember reading it and going, yeah, who's the idiot? Like, who the hell doesn't wear shoes in the laundry room? Like, that's really, like, that's out there. That's disgusting. And I was like, oh, I never wear shoes in the laundry room, right? But it was just that kind of, right? So we're just always, I don't know, we can always improve our attention to the moment, right? If that makes sense. We can always just be a little bit more attentive or a little bit more aware. We're always slipping out of it. And once again, that's just what we do. But in the sense of just that every moment has practice in it, right? There's always a moment to make yourself smaller and make your awareness of what's around you even bigger, if that makes sense. And I'm not saying I don't think anything different than what you guys have been saying, but I just think to shift the emphasis to what's around rather than kind of whether or not we're measuring up, or whether or not we're, doing our duty of taking the practice of the world. Is this making any kind of sense?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not, and there's not an
Sushim?
effort attached to it. It's just
Right.
being present with what's happening in front of you.
Yeah, right. And what needs to be done, right? And that no effort, as soon as you said that, I know Sushim was there when Haji said this, was she said there's a teacher who said, like, being helpful should be as automatic as arranging the pillow under your head while you're sleeping. Right? That it should be that kind of spontaneous and automatic and almost unconscious, right? And so that's when you said no effort, I think that's what I was thinking, is just to have it. And I know Oche mentioned once, right, that Sushim was leading the service, or it was this, or maybe Oche was, but that somebody had fallen off their cushion or fallen off the chair or something, and Sushim just ran, right? And Oche was like, wow, that's practice, right? So to try to just, so I'm preaching to the choir, I think, because I know all of you, and I'm also saying hello to Haley. But it's just a good reminder, because we're always kind of screwing up in amusing ways, right? Or we're always, kind of getting ourselves in there. We can always just be a little more attentive, I guess, or I don't know if that makes sense, without beating ourselves up, like without saying like, oh, I screwed it up. But it's just, there's always room for improvement. And once you realize that, and again, a good Zen teacher will always be kind of following you around, pointing out like, oh, you didn't do this, and you didn't proofread your email, and you didn't, pay attention to this. And one of the things I was going to mention, right, is even the way that we're trained. Because I noticed, right, each of the teachers trains us differently, which is actually itself a koan, which is there's not a right way to do Zen even. There's just whoever's in the room, whoever's senior in the room, how they do it, and you watch them and follow them, which is a lesson in humility. And I think that's the word I'm looking for, is radical humility. And so I think about Doan Sunum. And so Doan Sunum, when he taught us to do the muktak, he really emphasized, he was just like, you guys should do, and then pause, and then Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, pause, and then. And so we were in New York, and we were all doing it for a little while. And I think it maybe took us a month to stop doing it, right? And because we just let our attention, like I said, it's like when Haji comes to and sort of says, oh, in your practice, and you sort of perk up, right? We just we're like cut flowers in a vase. We almost immediately kind of start wilting, right? And so how do we keep? And so one of the ways that we can keep kind of all fresh is really being attentive to the moment. Anyway, yes, but taking your practice in the world, we don't practice for ourselves, and we practice for, I would say all beings, but that's sort of so enormous that it almost loses its bite, right? We practice, but I like to say meditation is a transitive verb. We don't just do it, in a circle or, for ourselves. So any other comments? Sushim, you're being very, you have an admirable meditation posture over there, and you're being very.
Yeah, it's just kind of comfortable. I don't have any further comments.
Any questions or?
I think it's kind of sorry about my weird kazoo voice.
I like it.
But I think it's kind of a relief to just think about living that way, and it's a relief to surrender to what's actually happening.
Yeah.
And I find that like in my life, being able to, as a parent, that's mindset is extremely helpful, because kids are always forcing you there.
Yeah.
And I've just noticed the more that I resist it and try to like do something else, or the more grumpy I am. So like this week, I'm trying to help Stella with her remote learning with school. And I'm just not doing anything else but sitting next to her and working with her on the assignments. Whereas I've been in the past, the past couple of weeks, I've been trying to like also work on my work while I'm helping her. I'm like, this is just not, this is not working for either of us. So, just coming to a place of surrender and acceptance, and I just feel like I could breathe a little bit more easily.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, and that makes me think a little bit about like Sushim, right? Like I think for Sushim and I just say this because I know, but like, the whole running the temple stuff is, you just do it, right? Like it just has to be done. And it doesn't make either of us particularly cranky. I mean, we have our moments, but it's really an opportunity for practice. And it's just like, it just needs to be done. And you just do it. And it's very liberating. It's really good practice. I think, I'm wondering, Sushim, I can't, You say, yes, yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Yeah. Samba, you were going to say something?
Oh, I was going to say it's so hard to do.
Yeah.
And, when there's so, especially when you're in situations where there's so many other things you could be doing or you're supposed to be doing. And it's just, I find it really challenging, but that's my goal for this quarantine period, is to really work and focus on that.
Mhm.
So it's been good to hear that. It's a good reminder. And the meditation, I like that it's in that list, because it sort of gives it another sense of purpose. Not so much effort, but more like a purpose behind your meditation.
Right. Yeah. Nice. Yeah. Because I think if you're really keyed into the moment and what's around you, your meditation you almost disappear. And like you said, it's a relief, right? It's a, there's this really, one of the mantras I like to repeat over and over. It's just, be like water, right? Like just, we all have that, or if yoga or body scan, like, oh, where's that point in you that's tight, or where are you clenching? And that can just, sometimes I'll say that to myself, be like water, just release that and just flow with whatever's going on and stop trying to fight whatever is happening. Yeah. All right. Any other comments, Susan Bob?
So is there a difference between the counting 1 to 36 and 5 to 0, or is it just a preference?
I think that the 5 to 0, sometimes when I teach the meditation class, somebody talks about teaching yourself to meditate. It's like training a wild elephant or a baby elephant. And I've seen, actually, maybe the Buddha used this, but like, that you chain the elephant to a tree until it learns to kind of not run away or, do crazy wild things, which is a horrible image. But I like to think of like the 31 to 36 as a very big, heavy chain. And the 5 to 0 being like a little bit more of a delicate chain, right? So, when you're just starting, you really need a big, heavy something to sort of really hold your attention, if that makes sense. And then the 5 to 0 is like, oh, this is a little lighter, and I can move with it a little bit more once your mind is a little bit more in line. That's how I think of it, but that's just my own.
That makes sense.
Yeah. And again, I think the switching up the practice is sort of, you get to a point where it's either automatic or it's rote. I mean, the advantage, like every so often, sometimes Sunam will say, oh, he'll teach you, like, he won't even tell you that it's 5 to 0 in Korean. He'll just say this, and I remember, and part of it also, all of it is to sort of just throw a spoke in the wheels of your mental bicycle. Right, to throw a stick in those spokes, right? Like, and just make your mind just jump out of that automatic, reactive, generated by yourself, right? And it's not always pleasant, it's sometimes it's really awful, and especially for people who think too much, it's kind of shocking, and but you never really get to unexpected places if you don't do that. So if that makes sense. All right. So, oh my goodness, here we are just talking and talking. We're never going to get to walking meditation and prostration. So, and we're never going to get to the cabbage story. So, yeah. So for walking meditation, I was going to say, like, I know you ladies, and I'm not sure, and for Haley's benefit, we could just show you just briefly walking meditation and just a little bit of a refresher. And Haju's advice was that I I'm going to try to put my camera in a way that you can sort of see my beautiful carpet and just walk around the edges of it to just illustrate. But the big things for walking meditation are the what you do with your hands. So the hands, yeah, and Sushim, is it the right hand, the right thumb is, and the left hand is over the right hand?
Yeah, so your right hand is, you make a fist around your thumb, like that, and then over the sternum, with the left hand over that. I'm not sure which, if the camera's showing me in mirror image or not. It is for me, but yeah, it's your right hand that's the fist, and the left hand over
I
that.
was going to say, and even for lefties, you're a lefty, right, Sushim?
Yeah, I'm a lefty, but I still do it that way.
Okay, because I was going to say it must feel kind of strange, right? Like I always wondered.
No, and I'm not sure why, but no, it's
Yeah, because once again, the goal is it's to compose yourself. You are a seeker, right? So the goal is to really bring yourself, to make yourself, once again, if you just sort of keep in mind with meditation, just making yourself as small as possible to give other things, which is the opposite of what I'm doing right now by talking too much, but to give like other things and beings the chance to kind of breathe and be themselves and appear. So when we bring our hands in and we walk mindfully, we're not flailing around, right? Or we can't knock things off tables, right, when we're walking like this, metaphorically or literally, ideally. So let's see if I can and then we have the 3 speeds of walking meditation. You're free to join us on Wednesday evenings if you want to experiment with the 3 speeds. Let me see if I can get my camera. I was going to say, Sushim's got his camera game going. He's in media professionally, so yeah. I'm not sure how well. I think we have to. Oh, wow, look at that. Yes, and you'll only be able to see my feet, but that should work. So again, with walking meditation, so we've got our hands, which you can't see my hands. And so there are 3 speeds. So there's kind of a faster speed, non retreats, people will run around. And then there's the medium speed, which again, what you'll do, and so I'm just going to emphasize certain parts of it. For the medium speed, so the person in front of me or behind me would be about 3 feet in a non-pandemic situation. And you're just walking normally. I think that's the other thing that people don't realize, or people start making it too complicated. And it's really just normal walking, right? It's sort of the heel toe, right? And so even this medium speed, it's going to be just very mindful. And you'll see Haju do it. One of the things that Haju likes to emphasize is when you're doing medium speed walking meditation, to really like use your feet almost like a monkey, like, just explore the floor with your feet. So making sure you get to the corners, right? Go all the way to the corners. And again, it's just normal walking, but it's just mindful, and you're using your feet to really feel the ground, feel the carpet, feel the difference in textures between different carpets. Get into all the corners. Pretend as if your feet were the way that you're apprehending the world, not through your hands or your eyes, but almost exploring the ground with your feet. We can kind of try that once we have a chance. Is this making some sense? Mm-hmm. And then we have a very slow speed of walking meditation, right? And we'll usually introduce it by clapping. And for the slow speed, again, it's just normal walking, but it's very, very slow. And for this, you might want to put your hands, your elbows out to the side just to get a little bit more balance. And you also, the other thing that you can do to help balance for slow walking meditation is to increase the space between your legs. So not try to walk as if you're walking on a tightrope, but walk, have your left foot and your right foot spaced between each other. So if you'd like to get up and just try walking around briefly, slowly. Okay. We won't spend too much time on this because we will get to frustrations. And Sunam recommends that you work with your breath while you do walking meditation. So you can time your breath with, for example, each outgoing breath could be your left foot. You'll realize that this action that we do so much of every day without ever really thinking about it or being conscious of it, that this is an opportunity to really come conscious of walking and our ability to walk, all those bones and muscles in our feet and ankles. Frankly, even the fact that we are able to stand on these two long, skinny things that we call legs is actually kind of miraculous. If we were at the temple, you would hear the chakpi, which is this, which is a signal to go back to your spots. And if we're meditating in the temple, we run back to our spots because we can't wait to sit in meditation again. And then you would hear it again for a bow and then to sit again. So any questions or thoughts or anything coming up, or this is your chance to ask that question you've always wanted to ask about walking meditation.
I have a question. So years ago, Sunam used to teach it where we were supposed to follow the foot of the person in front of us. I don't know if that's still the practice.
That's a really good,
at least on the slow.
Sure, yeah. It can be helpful, especially because the slow, I haven't personally ever heard him say that, but it kind of makes sense. And why I like that so much is that's exactly related to that seventh eye of meditation that I was talking about, right? It's the difference between, oh, I'm all that and I practice and I know what practice is, versus what is this person in front of me doing, right? Like, and just being aware of the person in front of you and following that person instead of your own fantasies or ideas, or, oh, I'm doing it right and they're doing it wrong, or they're doing it too fast, or, but just what are they doing, and then just follow it. And so I like that a lot. I think it's an exercise in practice and humility to do it that way. So I can see why he would have said that. And also it stops people from running into each other.
Yes.
Especially yeah. Any other questions or?
The feet was a good reminder. I kind of forgot about that. And then I'm always thinking, what am I supposed to be thinking about while I'm doing this?
Yeah, and it's really like, it's hard because I think our habit of not being conscious when we're walking is so ingrained. I don't think we're ever, I mean, I don't think I'm ever really all that aware of walking. You're always thinking about where you're going or who's in your way or, oh, the sidewalk is slippery, but you're not really thinking of yourself walking, unless you break your leg, even then. But yeah, so it's I think for most of us, it's a real struggle to have the same intensity of practice when we're walking. It feels like a break from meditation and not as a variation of meditation. And so to really, I every so often on like, on a retreat, I'll sort of just get very kind of trippy about it, right? Where it's like, how do I say it? Like when your foot is on the ground, right? Why do you say my foot is on the ground and not, oh, there's this new being of ground foot that has just come into existence, right? Like, you can really get kind of intense with your walking meditation. But I think we're just habituated to just not think about walking at all. Yeah. Yeah. Sushin, any tips?
Well, I just think that I hear people talking about taking walks more and more nowadays because we don't have a lot of other options. And
Nice.
I read this really good book. I don't remember what it was called, but it was about walking and spirituality or wisdom. And it mentioned that just about all the great, people that we consider these great philosophers they all did a lot of walking, out in some cases. I kind of wonder, where do they have the time?
Right.
You just kind of, I guess you just kind of make the time. But yeah, I think it does get me back into appreciating that ambulatory thing that we can just take for granted,
Yeah, because you were walking a lot for a while, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I had about a year where I didn't ride my bike much. I didn't have a car, so I thought, well, I'll just walk a lot, and it was pretty great actually. I want to get back into it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And of course, Haju is the ultimate walker. She's like, so, and she likes to tell the story. There was somebody from Ann Arbor who went to Plum Village in France and actually stayed with the Thich Nhat Hanh group and with Thich Nhat Hanh and was really excited and came back and said, Haju, they don't meditate there. And she was like, what are you talking about? And they don't sit. He's like, they don't sit in meditation hardly at all, right? They walk, right? And so Thich Nhat Hanh is another great walking meditation person and loves to say, like in airports or, wherever, you can do that wherever you are. It's just, bring your mind to your body. Yeah. So yeah. All right. So let's move to prostrations. Refresher into prostrations, as it were. So prostration practice, and usually when I teach this class, generally, and we're at the temple in front of the altar, it's kind of this moment where, you see the look a little bit less nowadays, but you see the look on people's faces and you say, yes, this is actually exactly what your mother warned you about, that if you took this meditation class, you would wind up bowing to golden idols on the altar and we're converting you. And of course, that's not at all what we're doing, right? So Jungji and Sanban, do you guys do prostrations now? I know Sanban, you've been doing the morning practice, right? With Osho and Sabaha. So your prostration, you're all set with prostration. You've been doing 108 in the morning, and yeah.
No, I don't. It's not a regular part of my practice now.
Yeah. I would recommend, even if you're just starting out, to do, say, 3 of them before you sit, because it kind of just alerts. And I think we're all doing a lot of sitting, and with our world kind of restricted, it alerts your body that, oh, this is different sitting, right? That, because, part of our body is just like, oh, right, we're just going to sit for 20 minutes. But it's special sitting, or it kind of gives it a sort of sacred frame or whatever, or an intentional frame to the sitting. But yeah, so Sunbug, I'm interested in hearing, now that you're doing all these prostrations. So how do you one of the things, once again, and this is the way that it goes with practice, it's like water, is it just ebbs and flows and means different things, and you have different feelings about prostrations, or they mean something different to you, right? It just evolves, right? Like, and so I'm just wondering, how do you see prostrations? Like, if you had to explain prostrations to somebody, what would you say? Or why do them, or what does it bring to your practice, if anything? Yeah.
It's so much. I mean, in 108 prostrations, you go through so many emotions, like, well, not emotions, but just different thoughts. And well, I guess I try to use it as there's just so much that I don't even know where to start. I try to use it as like humility, like bringing myself, down to the earth. And I use that to remind myself that there's no self, and that we're all essentially part of the earth and each other. So to me, going down to the ground is sort of reminding me of that. And I use the chanting or saying Kwanse Mbosal, bringing our hands up at the bottom. I kind of am taking in, Kwanse Mbosal, and trying to take in the compassion and wisdom. And so, yeah, I mean, there's, sometimes I'll just really focus on counting, and there's so many different things that I get out of it depending on what I'm feeling. And sometimes I'll just use it as a way of, asking the universe to make me available to other people. And yeah, I mean, I don't know if all those things
but that's fantastic. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because that's it's a good description. And sometimes you're just bored, right? Like, sometimes it's just a good way to wake up, right? The first 25, you're like, oh my God, really? And it's so early. And I still like, and Sunim likes to say they're really good for constipation, and mental and physical, but he likes to say that, which is true.
It's kind of like you're just in it, like I'm in it for 108, so I might as well just use it. And it's kind of like your own, like, really focused practice time.
That's right, because there's what I love about our practice is the difference between sort of saying, yeah, I did 108 prostrations, or I'll do 108 prostrations, and actually doing them is a totally different experience, right? Like, and even more so with 1,000, right? But this, like, it's one thing to sort of say, oh, I'll do 108 prostrations, and then to actually do them is a completely different experience than saying it. I don't know if that makes sense. And what I love is that every morning you wake up and the counter is back at 0, right? And so it's this wonderful reminder, and you can feel yourself fighting it and saying, well, I did these yesterday and I'm getting good at them. And it's like, we don't care, we're back at 0. And one of my, being 51 years old and a little bit just, completely out of shape, is the first 25, I'm amused, the first 25 are actually kind of rough sometimes. And as I keep going, it's almost like oiling. I feel like the Tin Man, right? Like, it's like oiling the machinery, right? And I see it as just like you really literally getting to a place where I'm flexible enough and watery enough to be able to respond to what's needed during the day, right? Like, it's just a great way to limber up and just be like, okay, now I can be more responsive and more present because I've kind of oiled the joints. Literally. Yeah. Sushim, any prostration thoughts from you?
Yeah, I think for me, it's always helpful in that a little bit like what Sanbang's saying, it's just, there's many different ways to kind of feel, and you'll find your thoughts going different places. But I think of the time that I had completely thought a friend of mine from the temple was annoyed with me or angry with me and wanted to talk and needed to, like, talk to me. And I thought it's not so much that I was afraid of the confrontation, but I was sort of gearing up for that. And then we were doing prostrations to raise money for the temple. So we did 500 prostrations, and I kept thinking about, oh, what did I say? Oh, do I apologize? What should I apologize for? And I was doing all this living in the past and the future for several of the prostrations, maybe the first 200 or 250 or something. But then just at some point, all you can really do is just do your prostrations, because that's just what you do. So it's a good way to talk about constipation. My was constipated with pitch, And then after we did the prostrations, he had a completely different question for me. It had nothing to do. It was a totally imagined experience. Like I was making it there was going to be this confrontation. He wanted to talk about me, something totally unrelated. And so I didn't even need, the blockage was completely unnecessary. So yeah, we always talk about being in our heads, and I have that tendency sometimes. And I think sometimes you're tempted to go, oh, well, then I'll just be in my head about getting out of my head. And it just doesn't.
Right. Nice.
Yeah.
That's a great, yeah. As prostrations take you out of your head pretty efficiently. And your story reminds me, right, of the story of the head of the Choge order in Korea, the one who died in the 90s. But and of course he was in a monastery at the top of a mountain, and you probably heard about this. But he had a policy that anybody who wanted to come and see him or ask him a question had to do 3,000 prostrations first. Right. And that, 1,000 takes about 3 hours. So you can multiply that by 3. And there was a little hut right at the base of the mountain where you would do your 3,000 prostrations. Haju and Sunum did the 3,000 prostrations. She's very proud that she actually finished before Sunum did. And then you were allowed to go up and talk to this monk, right? And so like the president of Korea went to talk to this monk at some point, and the monk said, that'll be 3,000 prostrations. The president of Korea said, never mind. And there are stories of people who had a very urgent question that all of a sudden after 3,000 prostrations, like Sushim said, the constipation's gone, and they've kind of figured it out somewhere between 2,925 and 3,000, and got done with them, and we're like, okay, no, I'm actually good. Like, I don't need to talk to you anymore. So, and there's also a Korean, there's a Korean Buddhist who basically has, or he's not a Buddhist, he's like a doctor or something. He's like, I don't care if you're a Buddhist or not, everybody should just do 108 prostrations every morning because it's just really good for your, circulatory system and your joints and your muscles, and it's just really good physical exercise. So it takes about 20 minutes. So we're not going to do 108 prostrations now, but we can review the prostration technique, I suppose. And I know Sushim has positioned his camera carefully so that we can, because there's 2 different styles of prostrations. There's slow prostrations and fast prostrations. I actually had a dream, Sushim, you'll find this hilarious. I had a dream. I dream a lot about prostrations, or in my head. When I'm stressed, I'll sort of mentally go through the motion, which I find really interesting. And I had this fantastic dream where I was able to actually do the thing where you stand up without using your hands, like you just use your toes. And I had this dream where I was doing that, and I was so happy, and it was very easy. And this is what I dream about. So it's, yeah. But yeah, so Sushim, do you want to illustrate the slow prostration? So I can narrate maybe, right? And while you do that. So yes, so you've got your hands together in Hapjeon, you're standing. And then the slow prostration, you will go down to your knees. So this is if you're doing, first you'd make a half bow. Then you go down to your knees. Sushim, because he's athletic and fit, doesn't need to use his hands to get down to his knees. I do. So he's on his knees, and he will bow forward, right? With your head touching more or less. And then you lift your hands. And then he's going to come back up to a kneeling position and come back up to standing. See, that is what I was dreaming that I could do. That was my superpower, that I could do it without my hands. So I can illustrate with my humble mat and cushion just to show you how people who are 51 and not limber do a slow prostration. So the slow prostrations, you're going to do them like that if you're just doing 3 prostrations. When you come into the Buddha hall, or before you sit at home. So again, I'll do I think you can kind of see me here, right? And I can do it sideways. So again, a side bow and then coming down. Then you can use your hands, but you stop here. Now lift your hands, come back up to kneeling, and then I push myself back up to standing. So and we could make you do that, but the whole point of making you do that is to like watch your technique. We could do that. Then we have the fast prostrations. So Sushim and I will do the faster prostrations, which if you're doing 1,000 or even 36 or 108, you're not going to do that kind of slow version where you stop reverently, kneel, and then come back to kneeling. You basically skip the kneeling step. So you make a half bow, and then you come down. And instead of kneeling, you just go all the way down with your hands and then come back up. I'll do one more. And then when you're doing the last in a series, which I'll do now, actually, you come down, move your finger, and then you come up to kneeling, and then you do another half bow, and then come up to standing, and then make a bow. So if you were just doing 3 prostrations, that last, after the 3rd prostration, you would do another bow on the floor and lifting your hands. Yeah, any questions or thoughts about technique? Or
Is there something that a certain way that you arrange your feet too? Like when you're
yeah.
I
Yeah,
think
so a couple of details. You put, what is it, the right foot over the left foot?
oh, actually, I do left over right.
I think that's because you're a lefty.
Probably because I'm lefty, but yeah, when you're down, you cross your ankles.
Yeah.
Cross your feet.
And I've heard the crossed feet. That was actually a really great camera angle. So I don't know how you did that. That was like we had your feet right there. And I read somewhere, or I heard somewhere, that the crossed feet also helps get your butt down. So Sunam's pet peeve is that Westerners, when they do prostrations, like you don't want to be like a cat who's having their tail petted, right? Like you want to make sure, right? Exactly. That's the cat with the tail petted that you want to, exactly. But yeah, Sunam finds it kind of obscene and offensive to have your butt in the air. So that's kind of just something to have.
People have tight hips.
Right, exactly. Thank you, yoga
They
teacher.
can't do it.
Exactly. It's not intentionally,
Yeah.
exactly. And people who've not been doing prostrations for their entire lives, yeah. And the other thing, and Sunbal mentioned this too, is at the bottom of the prostration, you can say, so a couple of things about what you say when you're doing prostrations. And so generally at the bottom of the prostration, we'll say Kwanse and Bosal, and then come back up. And Kwanse and Bosal. So if you're doing a lot, that becomes a really great way to kind of just get that energy out. And then 2 weeks before major Buddhist holidays. So we are in that zone right now because Buddha's birthday is right around the corner. So when we're 2 weeks away from Buddha's birthday, we say Sogumani Bul at the bottom of our prostrations. So say Sogumani Bul and then come back up. And then of course, the gathas, if you're familiar with the gathas. So you don't need to do 108 prostrations to enjoy the gathas. You can do them, if you're doing 36 prostrations, you can say the gathas after every 8, and then just do 4 at the end. But for 108 prostrations or for 36, so after each set, because there will be 4 sets, there is the gathas. So the first one is great is the matter of birth and death. The second one is impermanence surrounds us. The third is be awake each moment. And the fourth, which I love, if you're doing 108, you're sweaty, is 100, and this and that, is do not waste your life. And it's great, quite wonderful to do it on retreat when there's 40 people and, you know, a priest shouting them, and very energetic and a great way to sort of start your day. So yeah, so it's just generally, and I really recommend prostrations, you know, when like Sushim said, like, you've really got a difficulty with somebody that you just really can't think your way through, or something's really bugging you, or, you know, my big example was in November, is it already 2017, right? November 15th or whatever, in France, the terrorist attacks. What was it, 2015? Anyway. And the terrorist attacks in the Bataclan, in the concert hall in Paris. And of course, I'm a French professor. And of course, you know, I have friends. It was a very kind of, you know, it was the Wicker Park of Paris, basically. So many of my friends live in that area. And it was awful. And I have push notifications on my phone, and I could just sort of see it going on, and it was going on, and the death toll kept going up. And I was watching CNN, and I was just feeling more and more agitated and more awful. And what's lovely about being a Buddhist is, instead of just having that mountain, it was like, well, what do I have? Just always look to the Dharma. There's always something in the Dharma that can help you in our practice. And I was like, well, what do I can do prostrations. And I did 108 prostrations, and it was just incredibly helpful, right? To just get my emotions a little bit in line. And so definitely, you know, in this period of real suffering and uncertainty and stress, prostrations can be just such a really good friend. And especially when we're not able to go outside or go to the gym the way that we did, you know, this is really a great time for prostration practice. So any comments, Susham, or anybody?
One could see with the hands how you turn your, you know, your palms are touching the ground, and then you turn them up. I don't know. Did we say something? I don't know.
Exactly. Yeah. So with the bottom, yeah.
You're down like this.
Hands up. You can lift them. Do you lift them, or do you just turn them up?
I don't lift them, but
But do you lift them when you?
I think
that's optional.
Yeah, I think I do a little bit. Yeah, a few inches. Yeah, I don't know if I've ever been told to.
And I always think, like, on our altar, when we have the water offering on the altar, we take the lid off and we put it like this. You know, that to me is also with the prostrations, right? It's just this gesture of reception, you know, receptiveness, right? Of just, you know, receiving whatever the world has to give us, and then coming back up. Yeah, it's a really powerful practice. I had a toe injury, and I think I still have it, but I'm just not walking around in bad shoes all the time. And then of course, you know, I had various leg injuries, and the podiatrist was just like, you can't do prostrations anymore. And I was in tears, and I called Sunim. I was devastated. Because it's just such an important, and you get in the rhythm. Like I said, it's a very powerful, yeah. And I'm happy to say that I'm back to doing them now that we're all in lockdown. Like, I'm actually doing 108 at least 3 times a week. So, and they feel great. So we'll see how long that goes on. But yeah.
Yeah, what you said about doing those during a stressful time or a time when you're really mentally agitated for any reason, it's almost like you're meeting your body and your mind where they are at, because sometimes you're not you know, if you're in a certain state of mind, you can't just sit there and not move. So I feel like having another practice, like even walking meditation or prostrations, can actually just like get you to a place where you can sit. But you know, it's part of like being in the moment where you are and working with that, rather than some idea of what you think meditation practice should be.
Absolutely.
So maybe I'll start doing them again too.
Yeah, no, I really recommend it. And chanting also, don't forget the chanting, right? And so once again, that story about the guy who got enlightened by chanting, which I like the idea. There's nothing magic, and this is really hard for us, right? And it was hard for me. Like I was in tears when I couldn't do prostrations. But there's nothing magic about meditation. And I think in the West, we kind of think, oh, everything needs to be in service of meditation. Meditation is the bomb, and that's the ideal. And then everything else is just a path to meditation. Is you could probably become enlightened by doing a ton of prostrations, right? Or, you know, and I remember a 5-day retreat, Doan Sunim, who is kind of the most kind of just my role models in terms of Buddhism, and just exemplary. He had some kind of injury and did a whole retreat in a chair. And I was laughing because I had had my ankle surgery or something and had to sit in a chair. I was just like, oh, it's less than, and I'm injured, and it's, this is just, not quite right. And, it's not real meditation. And then to see Doan sit a 5-day retreat in a chair, I was like, okay, that's just my head, right? That's just this, we build it up, which we don't need to do. So all paths are good paths. So that's also something maybe to play with, like to just do prostrations for a week and see how that goes, right? Or chanting, and just to kind of unsettle the, oh my God, meditation is where it's at. Yeah. Any other questions?
The chanting's been really helpful now at this time that we're under lockdown. When I find myself getting really anxious, I'll just start to chant, and it just brings me right back.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you chant? Is it Maum or?
I've been doing Maum, yeah, or Kwanzaa Bosal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's really helpful during this time.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And also with the prostrations, I used to do just 10 in the morning, and even just that was such a great way to just focus. Just
Right.
that little amount of time I found so helpful.
Totally. Yeah, thanks. I think that's right. Yeah. I think doing like 9 or 12, like when I was on my injured reserve list. Yeah. Any other comments or questions? So traditionally, I could tell a very long story about cabbages, and I will at some point in the future, but we're kind of out of time. We generally go around at the last class and just sort of say, introduce yourself and what you do out in the real world, if you feel like saying it, and then what you got out of the class and any suggestions for improvement. So, and again, I'm just really grateful, Haley, that you're with us. I think you can hear us. You don't need to speak if you don't want to, but it's been wonderful having you with us, and I hope you enjoyed the class. And I'd love to hear either tonight or by email. Feel free to give us your feedback. So, but it's been great having you with us. So, but in the meantime, Jungji, do you want to? Yeah.
Sure. Nothing comes to mind about how to improve it. I thought it was really great. I feel like too bad.
Other than having it in person.
Yeah. There were a lot of people in the first class.
Yeah.
I was like, too bad for them that they didn't stick it out. But no, I don't know. It was a really great, I've been, I know I haven't been to the temple in a while, but I have my home practice, and this has just been really helpful, and remembering, being refreshed, and it's really good timing. And I'm just very grateful to you and Sushim for keeping this going and being there for all of us. So thank you.
Well, yes, and it's been wonderful seeing you. And I will say, actually, I sent out the email to everybody after the last class. And one of those people for that first week actually wrote back and sort of just said, you know what, I'm just zoomed out by the end of the day. Like, crazy. I'm exhausted. But he was just like, I really like the first class. I'm reading, I love your email messages and I love them, and I can't wait to take it in person, the next time. So it's one of those, like, it's out there, and even if people didn't come. Yeah. So thanks. Yeah. Sanban.
I want to say it's great to see Jungji.
Thank you. Great to see you too.
I can't think of anything to improve. I wasn't at the first class, so I'm not really sure what went over, but I agree with Jungji that it was really great timing. I don't do a lot of Zoom during the day, so I'm fine with the Zoom. And especially the meditation reminders, and that just made a world of difference.
Right.
It's been so long since I took the introductory to meditation course. So yeah, that completely transformed my meditation.
Oh, yeah.
Just the few things we went over. So thank you.
Yeah, no, great to see both of you. Yeah. And Haley, if you'd like to say anything, I'll just give you the chance. You can use the chat function or you can just pass. It's fine. It's all good. I can see you there.
Is that the applause symbol?
Yay. Oh, yes, it is. Thank you. Oh, it's lovely. I just love, yeah, I just love that you're there. So thank you so much for coming. We appreciate it. Yeah. And if you have anything else to say, feel free to email us. Yeah. And Susha, any thoughts or?
Yeah, I mean, I do appreciate your Sanbong, you know, he's saying thanks, but I actually, it really goes to everyone who participates, because it helps me stay in touch with, like, it's really easy these days for me to veer away from practice, you know. I'm not at the temple, you know, and when I'm there, I have that like luxury of like all this stuff that needs to get done, and you know, that helps me stay focused. That's like what's a good analogy? It's like a track, you know, to get on. And I know that track isn't really there, and so it's very, very easy to then just kind of feel sort of unmoored. So it really, thanks to everybody who showed up, you know, and that affords me the opportunity then.
Absolutely, yeah. When I was just looking, let me see. Okay. Sorry. I was just looking to see if I had it on my, yeah, Sunbug knows what I was trying to do. Yeah, because on my own account for Zoom, I can actually make it look like I'm at the temple for Buddha's birthday with the lanterns behind me. I can change my background to the temple. I just wanted to see if I could do it. But yeah, no, it's been absolutely really wonderful touching base and seeing you guys. And it's still the whole reason I started coming to temple, you know, in 2007. And I took the class. My ex-husband and I had just separated, and I was in my own place, and I had no furniture, and it was the bottom of the wave. It was the bottom of the trough. And we used to live right around the corner from the temple. So I was like, oh, I think there's this temple, and I think they have meditation classes. And I kind of had a crush on a guy who was a Buddhist. So I was like, oh, if I can go to the class, and I'll have something to email him about. And I went to the class. I kind of dragged myself to the class every week. I got on my bike. Week, I wasn't sure if I would come back. And at the end of the hour and a half, I'd be like, oh, you know what? I feel I have more energy. I feel like I took a nap. I feel refreshed. And nothing, there was nothing that ever really gave me that feeling, right? That wasn't like coffee or something. Like, it was just like, wow, what happened? And I don't think I closed my eyes, and I don't think I took a nap, but I feel so much lighter and better and more energetic. And so I have to say, against my expectations, because I was a little skeptical about whether we could pull this off on Zoom. And at the end of every class, including this one, you know, I'll shut the computer off and just say, wow, I still have that lightness and that feeling. And a big part of that is spending time with you all. So thank you. Yeah. It's been great. And we will be doing Buddha's birthday in e-birthday. Yes, so Sushum is locking down the cabaret. I think we have some very special guests, right? We have some people from really far away.
Yes.
And including some music from Kohei too, I think.
Yes.
He said he'd send you an MP3 file. Yeah.
And video too.
And then so that's on Saturday the 2nd at 7 p.m.
Yep.
Right? And then Ann Arbor will be doing the Sunday morning service, including the bathing of the baby Buddha, the child friendly. So, and I know kids really dig that. So that will be Sunday morning at 9 a.m. because of the time change with Ann Arbor. And then Sunday night at 7 p.m. Central, we will have the lantern lighting service, and which I will do from my home office right here. I'll sort of ringlead, but we'll have people reading Dharma passages, and it'll be and chanting Maum, and I think it'll be really, and it'll be a mix of Chicago people and Ann Arbor people. So, and with some special guests, Tada and Kohei, I think are both going to be reading as well. So, no one has, I don't know if you heard from Noah Sushin, but no one has like a big exam or something on that Monday. And so he would have loved to, but he's like, it's a 7-hour time difference because he's in the Netherlands still. And then he has to get up to do this exam. So he sends his best, but he won't be able to join us. But he's wonderful.
Are all those events going to be through on Zoom?
Yeah, so we're gonna Zoom. Well, they'll be, I think the easiest thing it'll be for the spectators, because we don't, I think there's a ceiling on how many people can Zoom at the same time, and with various accounts. So I think the participants will Zoom and the spectators will follow on YouTube live, which I'm realizing I can sort of stop recording